There are currently 100,000 very sad Americans all on a list. They are all waiting for either 1, a biologically compatible person to selflessly give up one of their kidneys, or 2, a biologically compatible person to die, or 3, their own death. This is the waiting list for kidney transplants in the United States. And every year, less than 1/6 of that 100,000 actually get a kidney. 5,000 of those people waiting don't make it. The rest are left waiting on expensive dialysis treatment to see which of the 3 options the next year will bring. All of this pain could be avoided, and it would be fairly simple, with one change: money. Financial incentives for donors would increase the supply of organs and eliminate our organ crisis. So why isn't this legal now? Well, in 1984, the U.S. Congress passed the National Organ Transplant Act, or NOTA. This act prohibits the transfer of any human organ for valuable consideration. This was designed to protect donors from being coerced into selling their organs, as that would be exploitation of those in poverty and put the rich at a higher advantage. Well, it wouldn't, but we'll get to that. This bill is now inadvertently responsible for over 5,000 deaths per year. We'll get to that too. The people that created NOTA were unaffected legislators who could only preconceive the situation of a person in need of an organ. Studies show that the perception held by people unaffected by organ donation are distorted in favor of only one of the parties involved. While these legislators were trying to protect donors, their personal position was responsible for creating a law that is unfair to the people on organ transplant waiting lists. Also, in 1984, the speculated estimates for supply and demand of organs was widely inaccurate. This means that this law was created at a time when people had no idea our country even had potential for an organ crisis as severe as the one we have today. Supporters of this law claim that paying for a human life to be used as a tool of health is unethical. They say this instrumentalizes them, and a human life is just too sacred for that. So is it better to let a person die just so that this scenario can be avoided? In 2011, a group of plaintiffs brought to the U.S. Court of Appeals the argument that organ transplantation is a fundamental right, and NOTA cannot constitutionally infringe that right by banning monetary involvement. The court ruled that organ transplantation was in fact not a fundamental right. There are people that will die without an organ transplant, so this court ruled that some people's only means to life is not fundamental. So what if I said there is a country that has actually established a legal market in organs, and in this country, none of the problems that NOTA was trying to prevent are a glaring issue? And what if I said this country has actually eliminated their kidney waiting list? This place is very real, and that place is Iran. In 1988, 4 years after the passing of NOTA, the Iranian parliament permitted legal organ sale. 11 years after this permission, there were no more people waiting for transplants, but in fact there is a list of people waiting to be paid donors. So in this legal organ market, do the rich have a significant advantage over the poor? Well, the fact that no one is waiting for kidneys says that this benefits all economic statuses. And are the poor being exploited by being objectified as a tool for the healing of others? Well, studies show that 90% of donors are satisfied with their decision to sell their organs. So the reason that the poor are protected from exploitation in Iran is because not-for-profit organizations such as the Iranian Kidney Foundation facilitate the legal agreements between donors and recipients, so everyone is legally protected and neither party can take advantage of the other. Before not-for-profit organizations assumed this role, it was the job of the Iranian government to facilitate the contracts between donors and recipients. It also used to be that the financial incentives provided to donors were government rewards. This ended when the government refused to raise the minimum incentive amount along with the rapid inflation rate of their currency. But we'll get to that later. For Iranians that sell their organs to those in need, the government grants 1 year of health insurance to pay for follow-up care and treatment for conditions that result from the surgery. Most of the donors in Iran do tend to come from lower income areas, but that is to be expected because those are the people that benefit the most from financial incentive. So how could a version of this system be ethically implemented into the US? Well, first and foremost, every single person in America would have the innate right to say no to donating their organs. This is to ensure legally that if somebody agrees to sell their organs for a certain price, they did so of their own autonomous decision. To further prevent against coercion, perhaps donors and recipients should not even know each other. Donors would volunteer to be organ sellers, and a government agency or a non-for-profit organization would match them to a recipient that is a complete stranger. A government-regulated minimum for incentives would need to be established. The Iranian government had trouble regulating this, but the American government would have a lot less to worry about due to the American dollar being a much more stable currency. For this system to be implemented in America, donors would have to be granted lifelong health treatment for follow-up care and issues that may arise as a result of their surgery later in their life. A government agency or a not-for-profit organization would have to draw up the legal contract that shows that both parties agree on a price for the organ at or above the legal minimum. Before donors made any commitment, they would have to be thoroughly educated in all the health and financial risks that they would be taking by selling their organs to a recipient. Donors would have to undergo extensive health testing to be eligible for donating, as well as provide an accurate health history. It would be permitted that charities could legally raise funds for people that can't afford to pay a donor for an organ. This would reduce any advantage over poorer Americans that wealthier Americans hold. All these regulations would protect both parties from being negatively affected by the business of the deal they are making with each other. So what does the US look like with our shiny new system in place? Well, now 5,000 lives are being saved every year. And the 100,000 people on the kidney waiting list are no longer paying for expensive dialysis treatment. Fun fact, the cost of a transplant is equal to that of 18 months on dialysis. So 18 months after a kidney transplant, there's money being saved. With this legal organ market, Americans that are down on their luck now have an opportunity to relieve some of their financial burden. This is significant because 73% of Iranian donors said that their monetary incentive was enough to resolve their financial problems. These financial incentives will allow people to donate that previously could not because they had to take time off work to do so. People in need of kidneys will no longer participate in transplant tourism. Transplant tourism pays large amounts of money to organ black markets in other countries. The organs in these markets have a high risk of coming from abused individuals with contractable diseases. Plus, transplants are usually performed by someone without proper medical training. So maybe the world would be a bit better if people had the liberty to make a little extra money by saving a life. Maybe we should take some note from Iran and save 5,000 lives every year. Everyone would be consenting and everyone would benefit. Maybe ethically that isn't such a bad thing.